Friends and viewer, today again welcome to the plays of Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, a greatest playwright in the history of world literature, and I'm going to discuss with you in detail about another tragic love drama of William Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. So before starting this, I would like to let you know how many characters are involved in this drama. So the first of all, chorus enters into the stage, then Aeschylus, Prince of Verona, one of the character, Paris, a young nobleman and kinsman to the prince. Now the two feuding family, Montague and Capulet, the heads of two houses at variance with each other. An old man of Capulet family, Romeo, son of Montague, Mercutio, kinsman to Prince and friends to Romeo, Benvolio, nephew to Montague, Tybalt, nephew to Lady Capulet, Friar Lawrence and Friar John. These are the two Franciscan priests. Balthazar, servant to Romeo, Samson, Gregory, and three musicians, Lady Montague, wife of Montague, Lord Montague, Lady Capulet, wife of Capulet, Juliet, daughter of Capulet, nurse to Juliet, citizen of Verona. These are the characters involved in the play Romeo and Juliet. So let's start. What does its story stands for? In this is the story about Verona. So in Verona in Italy, a town in Italy, another brawl breaks out between the servant of the feuding noble families of Capulet and Montague. Benvolio, a Montague, tries to stop the fighting. These two feuding family, they had an old ancient grudge and enmity between each other. Whenever their servant meet each other in the street, they started to clash. So the citizen, outraged by the constant violence, beat backing the varying factions. Prince Aeschylus, the ruler of Verona, attempts to prevent any further conflict between the two families by declaring death for any individual who disturbed the peace in future. Romeo, the son of Montague, runs into his cousin Benvolio, who had earlier seen Romeo moping in a grove of sycamores. After some prodding by Benvolio, Romeo confides that he is in love with Rosalind, a woman who does not return his affections for Romeo. Benvolio consoles him to forget this woman and to find another more beautiful one, but Romeo remained despondent. So meanwhile, Paris, a kinsman of Prince, seeks Juliet hand in marriage. Her father, Capulet, though happy at the match, asks Paris to wait 2 years, since Juliet is not yet 14. So Capulet dispatched a servant with a list of people to invite to a masquerade and feast he traditionally holds. He invites Paris to the feast, hoping that Paris will begin to win Juliet's heart. Romeo and Benvolio, still discussing Rosalind, encounter the Capulet servant bearing the list of invitation. Benvolio suggests that they attend, since they will allow Romeo to compare his beloved to other beautiful woman of Verona. Romeo agrees with Benvolio to the feast, but only because Rosalind, whose name he reads on the list, will be there. In Capulet's household, young Juliet talks with her mother, Lady Capulet, and her nurse about the possibility of marrying Paris. Juliet has not yet considered marriage, but agrees to look at Paris during the feast if she thinks she could fall in love with. The feast begins A melancholy Romeo follows Benvolio and their witty friends Mercutio to Capulet's house. Once inside, Romeo sees Juliet from a distance and instantly falls in love with her. He forgets about Rosalind completely as Romeo watches Juliet entranced. A young Capulet Tybalt recognizes him and is enraged that Montague would sneak into Capulet's feast. He prepared to attack, but Capulets hold him back. Soon Romeo speaks to Juliet, and the two experience a profound attraction. They kiss, not even knowing each other's names. When he finds out from Juliet's nurse that she is the daughter of Capulet, his family enemy, becomes distraught. When Juliet learns the young man she has just kissed is the son of Montague, she grows equally upset. As Mercutio and Benvolio leave the Capulet estate, Romeo leaps over the orchard wall into the garden, unable to leave Juliet behind. From his hiding place, he sees Juliet in a window above the orchard and hears her speak his name. He calls out to her and they exchange vows of love. Romeo hurries to see his friend and confessor, Friar Lawrence, a priest, who thought shocked at the sudden turn of Romeo's heart, agrees to marry the young lover in secret, since he sees in their love the possibility of ending the age-old feud between Capulet and Montague. The following day, Romeo and Juliet meet at Friar Lawrence's cell and are married. The nurse, who is privy to the secret, procures a ladder which Romeo will use to climb into Juliet's window for their wedding night. The next day, Benvolio and Mercutio encounter Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, who still enraged that Romeo attended Capulet feasts, has challenged Romeo to a duel. Romeo appears, now Tybalt's kinsman by marriage. Romeo begs the Capulet to hold off the duel until he understands why Romeo does not want to fight. Disgusted with his plea for peace, Mercutio says that he will fight Tybalt himself. The two begin to duel. Romeo tries to stop them by leaping between the combatants. Tybalt stabs Mercutio under Romeo's arm and Mercutio dies. Romeo, enraged, kills Tybalt. Romeo flees from the scene. Soon after, the prince declares him forever banished from Verona for his crime. Friar Lawrence arranges for Romeo to spend his wedding night with Juliet before he has to leave for Mantua the following morning. In her room, Juliet awaits the arrival of new husband. The nurse enters and, after some confusion, tells Juliet that Romeo has killed Tybalt. Distraught, Juliet suddenly finds herself married to a man who has killed her kinsman. But she resettles herself and realizes that her duty belongs to her love to Romeo. Romeo sneaks into Juliet's room that night, and at last they consummate their marriage and their love. Morning comes and lover bid farewell. Unsure then they will see each other again. Juliet learns that her father, affected by recent event, now intends for her to marry Paris in just 3 days. Unsure of how to proceed, unable to reveal to her parents that she is married to Romeo, but unwilling to marry Paris, now she is Romeo's wife. Juliet asks her nurse for advice. She counsels Juliet to proceed if Romeo are dead and to marry Paris, who is better match anyway. Disgusted with nurse disloyalty, Juliet disregards her advice and hurries to Friar Lawrence. He concocts a plan to reunite Juliet with Romeo in Mantua. That night before her wedding to Paris, Juliet must drink a potion that will make her appear to be dead, and she is laid to rest in family crypt. The friar and Romeo will secretly retrieve her, and she will be free to live with Romeo away from their parents' feuding. Juliet returned home to discover that Romeo has been moved ahead one day and she has to be married tomorrow. That night, Juliet drinks the potion and the nurse discovers her apparently dead. The next morning, Capulets grieve and Juliet is entombed according to plan, but Friar Lawrence's message explaining the plan to Romeo never reaches Mantua. Here, Friar Lawrence message Romeo that her lover is not dead, instead she is unconscious, but that message did not reach. This is the climax of the play. Mantua, its bearer Friar John and God confined to a quarantine. Romeo hears only that Juliet is dead. Romeo learns only of Juliet's death and decides to kill himself. Rather than to live with her, without her, he buys a vial of poison with reluctant apothecary, then speeds back to Verona to take his own life at Juliet's tomb. Outside the Capulet's crypt, Romeo comes upon Paris, who is scattering flower on Juliet's grave. They fight and Romeo kills Paris. He enters the tomb, sees Juliet's inanimate body, drinks the poison and dies. By her side, just then Friar Lawrence enters and realizes that Romeo has killed Paris and himself. And the same time Juliet awakes, Friar Lawrence hears the coming of watch. When Juliet refuses to leave with him, he flees alone. Juliet sees her beloved Romeo and realizes that he has killed himself with poison. She kisses his poisoned lips, and when that does not kill her, proves his dagger in her chest, falling dead upon his body. The watch arrive, followed closely to the prince, the Capulets, Montague, and declares that Lady Montague has died for grief over Romeo's exile. Seeing their children's bodies, Capulet and Montague agreed to end their long-standing feud and to raise gold statue of their children side by side in a newly peaceful Verona. So this is the end, and this is the tragic end of these two lovers. So the character involved in this play is a very as you have heard, Romeo, the son here of Montague, lady, a young man of about 16. Romeo is handsome, intelligent, and sensitive, and also though impulsive and immature, his idealism and passion make him an extreme likable character. He lives in the middle of violent feud between his family and the Capulets, but he is not at all interested in. His only interest is love. At the beginning of the play, he madly in love with a woman named Rosalind, but the instant he lays eyes on Juliet, he falls in love with her and forget Rosalind. Thus, Shakespeare gives us every reason to question how real Romeo's new love is. So, Juliet, the daughter of Capulet and Lady Capulet, a beautiful 13-year-old girl, Juliet began to play a naive child who has thought little about lover, but she grows up quickly upon falling in love to Romeo. The son of her family is great, and because she is a girl in aristocratic family, she has none of the freedom Romeo has to roam around the city, climb over the walls to middle of night, get into a swordfish. Friar Lawrence, a Franciscan friar or a friend to both Romeo and Juliet, Marcatio, kinsman to Prince Romeo's close friend, another character, the nurse of the Juliet, Tybalt, a Capulet, Juliet cousin to mother's side, and Benvolio, Montague's nephew, Romeo's cousin, thoughtful friend, Capulet, a patriarch or the head of the family of Capulet, father of Juliet, husband of Lady Capulet, the enemy, unexplained reason, Lady Capulet, Juliet's mother, Montague, Romeo's father, and the patriarch of Montague clan, bitter enemy of Capulet. Lady Montague, Romeo's mother, Paris, a kinsman, prince, and the suitor of Juliet, most Friar John and Balthazar Samson. These are the character involved in this play, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a tragic love story written by William Shakespeare, evergreen, ever remain in the history of world literature. I think you will enjoy this when you read this play. Thank you very much.